Almost sucks to turn off the music. I want to talk about three things related to Baby Driver and Edgar Wright as a director. Of course, we talked about that a little bit for those who are here up front. I want to talk about pictures. I want to talk about music. I want to talk about morality. Because, first of all, hopefully did you guys, because I gave you some heads up, or maybe those who'd seen it had already told their friends, so did you catch all the graffiti? Or did you catch some of the graffiti as he was moving along? It's a play on words. I think even people who didn't really notice it the first time, like your mind does notice it. Edgar Wright knows some of the way that he's playing with things. People aren't going to catch it the first time, maybe not the second time. The best thing I liked was that somebody had actually graffitied over the word right with shake, so it actually changed between when he left and when he came back. So some quick graffiti artist does it work. Although there apparently are a couple good director tricks, you notice that most of what that entire walk to the coffee shop and back was one take. So all of that set in motion. I mean, there are a couple quick cuts. So there was a few movie making cheats, but that's a lot of choreography. Like I said, in some ways between the music and some of the ways that he did scenes, it's almost as complex as a musical. And part of what he also did, which I think some of you guys probably began to notice between the yellows and blues and various colors, is that he was sort of obsessed with the idea of color coding in this movie, and color coding based upon some of it's psychological perception, some of it's just the idea of good and bad, right and wrong, black and white, right? Baby, we see, is generally in black and white. He's got sometimes, and in fact, something that I didn't even know until doing a little research, the set designer working with Edgar Wright, she became so intrigued by the idea that he starts out, he's usually wearing a white shirt. It's kind of his uniform, and then his jacket has some slightly off-white sleeves on it. But throughout the course of the film, as he's being drawn more and more into this world, she progressively dyed that shirt, slightly increasing shades of gray. I kid you not. You might not have noticed, but by the time he's stealing a car and holding up other people at gunpoint, the shirt has changed considerably. It's not white anymore. He's not white anymore, right? All the characters have their own color signature. He's black and white. Actually, she is when she meets at the diner. What's her outfit? Black and white, right? Life and what's good and bad, right and wrong is black and white. Other people have colors, right? John Hamm, Buddy's wearing a lot of blue, and Jamie Foxx, our Bats, is wearing a lot of red. It's not even subtle with Bats, right? I mean, it's just all over the place. And if there's even a great, what he's wearing his every outfit, his hat, his King of Hearts, he's the Red King, and he's the most bloody of them, right? So he becomes very, very obvious. He's bloody, he's covered in red, he's the most violent of the group. Buddy's a little more complicated. It's also, we see things playing in the background. In fact, key scenes, as things are pressing in, you begin to see blue and reds, even when there's not necessarily cop cars or cops in the shot, there's blue and red because the law is coming after them. The law is coming after them. So you see a lot of that in the final sequences. And then, of course, there's even just the car. We start at the beginning. Right here, there's Baby's complicity in these crimes. As he's black and white, he's right and wrong, but he steps into what color car? Red. And red like Bats. And as the film goes on, he's sucked into more and more disposing of bodies, and then eventually even grabbing a gun and shooting Buddy. Right? He's becoming the things that he hates. And Edgar Wright thought a lot of these things through, had a fun crew that wanted to get in on all these ideas, and they do have effect. I got to talk about this on a podcast with a couple of the guys, asking, like, do we really think people notice? And if some of you hadn't been primed, would you have really noticed? Did you notice during the laundromat, all of the clothes spinning in the bag? I mean, I think you noticed, but you're not sure why you noticed. It could just be a creative choice. And even if you're like, well, is it self-indulgent? Or does it have a psychological effect on our viewing? He thinks it does. Some people, a lot of critics and other people think that it does have a lot of power to suggest things in our mind. Now, what's the dress that we see Baby's mother in? Yellow? That's right. And so then later, what do we see Deborah wearing in a sequence? She's wearing some yellow. When we see her not in black and white, she's got some yellow. Even out of all the other tapes in his cassette case, Mom's is yellow. Yellow, of course, the idea of yellow is warmth and comfort and brightness, so like the light, and so there's all those ideas going on. But there's also, of course, the power of music. So Edgar Wright has been phenomenal at visual communication and loves playing with those ideas, even when it's not for comedy. There's also then, about this movie, just using the power of music. Right, so the premise they come up with for us is he's got tinnitus, right? So he plays the music to dull the pain. And there's a concept that they talk about that. Edgar Wright talks about it in some interviews, but I found it pretty fascinating too. Because here he's participating in this world of crime and depravity, and he's using the music to sort of disassociate himself from it. Right? Music is dulling it too. Like, music has power to soothe, but it also has the power to desensitize. And we know it helps him. He uses it for timing. And he uses it both visually and with music. But there's something else. There's a great scene. I don't know if you guys noticed. There's very little reason for why Baby does this, or Miles, which is his appropriate real name, right? In the scene when they're on the second job and the guys are running toward the armored truck, he just suddenly pulls up by a few feet. He pulls up by a few feet. It's kind of appropriate. And what it does is, when he pulls forward like that, he pulls ahead just ahead of, so he and the viewer, his head actually blocks the armored car. So you can't see the violence. It's like I'm pulling ahead from this, and then I'm pulling back. Like the movie's showing us how he's trying to think, I'm removed from it, I'm not a part of it. And even the shades themselves are sort of a state of disconnection, right? And so that when we talk about music, even when we talk about movies, when does our escapism dull or numb us in a way that makes us remain in places we ought not? There's a great concept and conversation coming out of that. Because Edgar Wright talks about how, music provides a salve for our wounds. Right? We use music and art forms to dull our harsh realities. They're coping mechanisms. That's part of why people watch movies: escapism, diversion. But when does that actually distract us in a way that makes us stay in those environments or the lives? Or how does it anesthetize us to sort of a realization that we should be making changes? The very things that can be helpful in ways that can actually soothe us can also be the things that we then leverage, like self-medication, when we should be getting out of the places we are. Because this is a story, obviously, about bad company. Right? There's plenty of verses that go around in that. 1 Corinthians 15 says, "Don't be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Come back to your senses as you ought and stop sinning, for there are some who are ignorant of God. I say this to your shame." Right? Proverbs says, walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. Trouble pursues the sinner, but the righteous are rewarded with good things. Blessed is the one, Psalm 1 says, who does not step with the wicked or stand in the way that sinners take or sit in the company of mockers. Right? The longer he stays there, the darker his circumstances become. And he goes from heists to being part of murder, and then even on himself, just even separate from the people as we get toward the end. He's stealing a woman's car. He does give back her purse. And each one of the bad company that he keeps has different focuses. Right? We see his boss has that very basic love of money. At First Timothy 6:10 says, "The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil." That's a verse almost everybody's heard. Verse not even non-Christians have heard. Right? Some people eager for money have wandered and pierced themselves with many griefs. And then, of course, we have Bats, which is sort of that extreme other end, where he's got the love of violence. And he's the kind of character that Alfred would talk about the Joker and say, some people just like to what? Watch the world burn, right? Psalm 11, the Lord in his holy temple, the Lord in his heavenly throne, he observes everyone on earth, his eyes examine them. He examines the righteous, but the wicked, those who love violence, he hates with a passion. Psalm 11. And he's one of those guys we see here, it just seems like his conscience is seared. Right? He's sort of beyond, he's enjoying that violence. Now, Buddy's a little more complicated, maybe? What does Buddy love? He loves his nose candy. Buddy loves his wife, right? 1 John 2:16 says, "For everything in the world, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world." It's interesting. People talk, and there's speculation, because Edgar Wright keeps some of the cards close to his chest. He talks about the colors in some interviews, but he doesn't kind of let it all out there. But blue, if you actually just look up, what do colors represent? Yellow. Throughout history, what have the different colors been used to represent? You know what blue represents? Loyalty. It represents loyalty. What does purple represent? Royalty. Loyalty and royalty. We kind of have a relationship here. If you look at a lot of Darling's accoutrement throughout the film, she's wearing a lot of purple or light purple or various shades of different things. I mean, he's the loyal dog, as we see at the end, right? He objectifies her. When she's gone, that's when he really goes insane. And then if you actually notice, he's bathed in a lot more red light throughout the rest of the film. Right? So she kind of controls him, right? You killed that guy who looked at me funny, right? Bats looked at me funny. So it begs a question. Maybe a question none of you were asking. But baby finds Deborah, right? Where's that going to go? Or where could that go? There's even a moment where he runs from the cops. After the post office job, he runs down into that little mall and he throws on a bunch of clothes. What color are they? They're all blue. So is he becoming Buddy? Right, they're going to go on the run, take some guy's car. It's like, what is he becoming? He's becoming something that he's now bringing her in, allowing her to come with. That's going to make her an accessory. He's complicit in all sorts of different ways. And fortunately, he then pulls the plug, right? He pulls the plug and he turns himself in. That's the other good question, right? Do we let our affections untether us from the morality we should be anchored to? Anything wrong with loving your wife? No. Anything wrong with, stealing and killing for your wife? Okay, now we got some problems. Right? Baby's about to make her an accessory and a fugitive and ruin her life in myriad ways. And that's the warning, right? He realizes he can't go that way. Right? Scripture talks about that there are people who are slaves to sin, and we see sometimes people who are slaves to sin and seem desperate to escape, but unable to on their own. And at the same time, though, I don't want to let baby or Miles off the hook too easily, right? He's trapped in this world, but he's also making choices to continue in it. There's always a reason. So we want to feel sorry for him. But you know what? I feel sorry for him, but I also see vice in him. She mentions right at the beginning, she asks him, he says he drives for fun. And when was the last time, she asks, when was the last time he got to drive for fun? And what was his answer? Yeah, it was like, that was a job. That shouldn't be fun. That was theft. Like, he's enjoying himself. He's not just complicit, but there is some enjoyment there. See, he likes to think he's separate from it, but he's really not. And that's the part that's kind of interesting about this movie, that changes this narrative as we get toward the end. 1 Timothy 5:22 says, "Don't be hasty in the laying on of hands, nor take part in the sins of others. Keep yourself pure." He's taking part in the sins of others, even if he wants to think he's in a different category alongside them while he's doing it. And lest we forget, how did Kevin Spacey find him? He was stealing cars. Right? He's not without sin. He was caught committing crimes by a criminal. He roped him. He was not dragged, kicking and screaming against his will into the world of crime. So now in the film, we have him stuck in this world where he's pulling heists. Let's talk about heist movies for a minute. These are all over the place, right? Heist movies are a diamond. You can throw a rock and hit a heist movie. A lot of us love heist movies. My wife loves heist movies. I do too. But in fact, Edgar Wright, as I mentioned before we watched the film, he actually was slated to and was working on directing what movie? Actually left production because he and Marvel just didn't quite agree. Ant-Man, that's right. Right? Ant-Man is a heist movie in a lot of ways. And in fact, he works with his funny criminal buddies. Right? We like heist movies, and a lot of them usually have that idea of the smuggler with the heart of gold, right? The fun-loving criminal. The bad guy, he's bad, but he's not entirely bad, right? Notice the association there? That dress is not coincidental between Han Solo and Babe. Right? There's definite homage to the smuggler, right? It's the good bad guy, right? He steals, but he doesn't kill. He beats up people, but he won't, it's that fun-loving criminal he beats up people, but he won't hit a woman, he won't kick a dog. Right? Oddly enough, and what happens in the end of most of those type of heist films, right? Usually, the half-good, sort of middle-of-the-road character gets to ride off into the sunset. They escape law, they escape justice, they're on a beach at the end, and they got the bag of money, but the really bad guys were taken out, right? They usually get one over on them, and that's it. And that's, what does Deborah say, and then Baby says, sometimes all I want is to head west on 20 in a car I can't afford, with a plan I don't have, just me, my music, and the road. Like you want to make the getaway. The Baby Driver is actually a story that takes a different road, which is pretty unique. I'm sure there are others we could find, but it's not the norm. I don't think I've ever seen, and to my recollection, I was like, what other heist movie has the guy give himself up and do time like that? We actually have the character, the protagonist faces consequences and discipline for his complicity. Right? And then we see that montage as he works through the judicial system. And he gets his mugshot taken and processed, and then he gets 25 with potentially a parole after 5 years. And so you see him mopping the floors, which by the way, there's the prisoner black and white, and he's actually mopping a blue square. But he spends his time watching TV, reading a postcard from Deborah, and then of course, so at the end then, it must, like 5 years, he must be getting out, right? Or some people think that's just a dream sequence of what he wants to see, and we don't actually see what really happens. But it does turn to color, even though it's black and white when he walks out. And there's a rainbow. So here's the curious thing that made me think about it. Edgar Wright was going to direct Ant-Man. That's a PG or PG-13 Marvel Disney movie. I think only the really baddest bad guy really. A few people died. Certainly wasn't 66 F words. Which one's more wholesome? One that winks at the criminals and the criminal friends and thinks it's funny that they know a guy and they pull these jobs and they break the law? Makes them cute? Oh, but there was no bad words, so it's okay. Or one that says crime doesn't pay. Right? It's a trap that drags you down and you do need to ultimately face consequences. Here's what Ansel Elgort thinks played Baby. So I think the moral of the story at the end is that crime doesn't pay and Baby gets in trouble. I've always liked that because at the end of every movie like this, they drive off and they're in Mexico or something and it's a happy ending. Everything went perfectly or someone dies. It's usually not, he's in jail. Of course you gotta go to jail. So our lead character, our lead actor is pretty happy with the ending of the movie. And here, it also sparked another interesting question in my head because we always talk about the criminal, but he's the bad guy with the heart of gold. He's sort of in the middle there. You know, there's another word for that. Why do we like the lukewarm criminal? Even his fellow criminals don't like him. It's interesting. Nobody I think it's because we like to keep some of our pet sins in our own lives. We just like to think we haven't gone bats. Right? We aren't Hitler, so it's okay. I'm not perfect, but I'm not going to try to extract myself from these pet sins because I like those. I like this environment. I like these friends. I get drunk with these people, but I'm still a good Christian. We like to have our cake and eat it too. We like to be bad enough to enjoy ourselves in certain aspects, but still think we're righteous. And nobody likes lukewarm. Nobody does. Can you really blame Griff at the beginning? What does he say? You can't be in crime without being a little criminal. He thinks he's better than us. Truth be told, I think I'm better than Hitler. But I got a verse that says, all sin falls short of the glory of God. I got another verse that basically says, you've broken one of the laws, you've broken the law, period. Sooner or later, you'll have blood on your hands, Griff says, and they're actually right. And God doesn't like lukewarm. He says he'll spit them out. 1 Peter 4 says, Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourself also with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. As a result, they don't live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. You spent time in the past doing what pagans do: debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, detestable idolatry. They are surprised that you don't join them in their reckless, wild living, and they heap abuse on you. But they will have to give account to him who's ready to judge the living and the dead. And you can't be in the middle. And we will be judged. Here's what Edgar Wright thinks when asked about the ending. He says it was always the ending, baby had to give himself up. So my thought was this: I felt like we never see these in movies. It's the idea he needs to do something responsible and selfless because he realized it's paying off what Joe said to him. You don't belong in this world. It starts to hit him because Kevin Spacey says earlier, it's a good thing you like driving because you're going to have your foot on the gas the next 25 years. That the only real way out is to face the consequences. The only real way out is to submit himself to the officers. Edgar Wright goes on to say, do you understand what the rainbow in the last scene means? Remember, the teller tells him about the Dolly Parton quote. She says, everybody wants happiness, nobody wants pain, but can't be a rainbow without a little rain. He has to go through the incarceration to get to the rainbow. And so this should motivate our gears if we like the protagonist and think, all right, how do we escape from our compromised state? We might not be trapped in, most of us, I hope none of you are trapped in it, underneath a small criminal organization, and if one of your phones rings and you have to run out, I'll start worrying about you. But, right, how do we escape our compromised state? Right, because we all have affections and we all have desires and things that aren't necessarily been bad in our lives. Again, there she is, let's see, there she is, black and white. We all have affections, we all have things we desire. But if we just go one step to the left, we can easily become lost. Right? We can love those things and worship them in ways that actually take us away from what is good and pure. It's pretty easy. And then from there, we go all of the way to having a seared conscience and not even caring anymore. And maybe not murdering, but whatever sin it is, there's no conviction, no remorse, no regret whatsoever. We're red kings of our own little world, right? But even if we can't content ourselves, and we can't even just tell, well, I could be worse. Maybe I'm more like Kevin Spacey's character. I'm not Bats. Maybe I'm more like John Hamm's character, but I'm not Bats. Well, they all get the same fate. And we can dodge and weave our way through life, right? We can think that ultimately we're going to keep one step ahead, but ultimately, Scripture says, we want to get out of our sin and what we deserve. We're in a car we can't afford with a plan we don't have. As a baby deserves to be put away. But why do you think that if you think that he actually is getting out, that's not a dream sequence at the ending, or why do you think that he got out, or why would he have gotten out at 5, probably, instead of the full 25? What happens in court? A lot of good witnesses, right? Maybe he forces a shorter term and he then experiences much less discipline and potentially experiences freedom. Why? Because he has advocates. All the people that come and testify for him. Now, I love his foster father. That's like, he's a good boy. It's not his fault. Well, a dad or foster dad or a mom. Of course you're going to think those things. But the reality is, we face a life that will include discipline. But the story, I believe, is the ultimate story, right? We can experience eternal freedom because we have an advocate. Not an advocate who says that we are faultless, but an advocate who does something else for us. Right? John 2 says, my little children, these things I write to you so that you may not sin. If anyone sins, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous, and he himself is the propitiation for our sins. And not just ours, but also those of the whole world. Right? This life for me does, as God sanctifies me, involve some metaphorical mopping. There's going to be some trials. But it's not devoid of joys or music. Right? And that's the quote. Everybody wants happiness, nobody wants pain, but there can't be a rainbow without a little rain. 1 Peter says, after you've suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who's called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. That's why we humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God, so at the right time he may exalt us. So Baby Driver stands out to me because it actually ends the heist movie quite a bit differently. It actually doesn't glamorize the criminals as much as it could. And doesn't say somebody in the middle is somehow exempt or still without the need to face consequences this side of heaven. That just looked really cool. Let's pray. Father, thank you for a chance just to enjoy film, talk about it a little bit, and I do pray that is, whether it's an action movie, whether it is a drama, and even when the story or content doesn't point directly to you, you can remind us of things. Teach our hearts, teach our minds to enjoy it in the ways that we ought, and discard the things that don't fit. But see even in the mind of a filmmaker who probably doesn't know you, a wrestling with justice, a wrestling with consequence, a wrestling with someone to defend us or pull us out of bad situations, and wrestling with our own feelings of being trapped in situations where we've got ourselves into a mess and we don't know how to get ourselves out. And so I thank you for the ability to meditate on these things, also to laugh and smile, to enjoy a high-octane, energized movie. I do pray that you'll just help this be part of the rhythm, that we wouldn't use movies like Baby uses music to simply distract us or numb us from the realities around us, but that it could actually encourage us toward the realities we have in you. In your name. Amen.